Subscribe to Man Told for more stories. Now let's begin this one. If I'd known the man I was about to save was my own father, the one who left my mom and me in that ER all those years ago, I probably wouldn't have signed that paper. I thought I was made of stone. An ER nurse, trained for emergencies, not afraid of blood or loss. I'd watched too many people take their last breath right in front of me. So when the hospital told me I was the only match for a critical bone marrow transplant, I said yes without a second thought. Just another case, I figured. Just another stranger. Just another body I might help keep alive. But when the transfusion was done and I woke up in post-op, still hooked to the IV, the doctor walked in, looking unsure. The recipient? He wants to see you. He's awake. I nodded. Still wiping the sweat from my face, I pushed the door open. And then I froze. There he was, frail, gray-haired, eyes wide with panic. But I knew him in an instant. No mistake. My father, the man who never once held me. The man who walked out on my mom just as she went into labor. The man I swore I'd never forgive. I stepped back. My throat tightened. I had just saved his life. Me, the son he never claimed, had just given him a second chance to live. For a second, I wanted to scream. Tear that donation form to pieces. Take it all back. But he just looked at me, eyes brimming, and he said something I'll never forget. "You're Anthony, right?" I thought that was it. A father meeting his son again after nearly 30 years. I thought that was the end of the story. But then I found the notebook he left behind, and that changed everything. My name is Anthony. I'm 28, a night shift nurse at a frontline hospital in Chicago. I still remember my first interview. I wore a white shirt my mom had just ironed. It wasn't until much later that I found out I'd left the tag on the collar. No one ever taught me how to dress like a grown man. No one showed me how to shave, tie a tie, or talk to a boss. I had to figure it all out on my own, through small failures. And from watching my mother's eyes, the only person who stood by me since the day I was born. I grew up without a father. Mom said he was quiet, smart, but weak when it came to choices. When she got pregnant with me, he vanished. No letters, no calls. He chose to leave, she once told me. But not because of you. I didn't understand what that meant as a kid. How could a man choose to walk away from his own child? We lived in a tiny apartment on a month-to-month lease. No view of the park, just a cracked wall across the alley and the city noise echoing through the night. But every morning, Mom made coffee, hummed old tunes, and combed my hair with a broken plastic brush. I used to hate Parents' Day at school. I hated watching other kids run into their father's arms, lifted high off the ground. I only had Mom. She always stood back, holding her purse tightly, smiling gently, though her eyes dropped just a little. I remember once, when I was 7, I asked her, "Why doesn't Dad ever come to my birthday?" She was quiet for a long time. That night, under my pillow, I found a toy car and a note that read, "From your dad. I've always been watching over you." I knew she wrote it. I knew it wasn't true, but I pretended to believe, because I didn't want to make her sad. She was everything to me. The reason I went into healthcare, the one who stayed up with me through every exam, every overnight shift. I remember once she fainted in the middle of a class she was teaching. I waited 4 hours in the hospital hallway, alone. That's when I decided, one day, I'd be the one helping others, so no one would have to wait the way I did. I studied hard, worked part-time at a pharmacy, washed dishes in restaurants, saved every cent. Every time I saw Mom hold her head in pain from her chronic migraines, I wished I could learn faster, do better, be better, for her. Then, when I was 23, she was diagnosed with late-stage ovarian cancer. It hit me like a sinkhole. Even working in healthcare, I wasn't ready for how terrified I was of losing her. I took a semester off to take her to chemo. Every night, I made ginger tea, told her stories from the hospital. She still smiled, but I watched her hair fall out on the pillow. Her skin grew grayer by the day. One rainy afternoon, she sat on her bed, stared at me for a long time, then said, "You're a good man, Anthony. You became one without needing a father." I turned away. I didn't want her to see me cry. She passed away in winter. I held her hand until her pulse faded. By her pillow was a folded note, written in shaky handwriting. "If one day you see your father again, forgive him. Not for him, for yourself, so you can live in peace." I didn't understand why she wrote that, but I kept it in my wallet. like her quiet will. Since then, I've lived alone. The old apartment she left behind still looks the same. The chair she loved, her cracked porcelain mug, and a black and white photo in the drawer. Mom standing beside a man I've never met. I never looked for my father. I used to think, if someone truly wanted to find me, they would have already tried. 3 months before the bone marrow transplant, I signed up for the National Donor Registry, not out of some noble purpose. Just, after every shift in the ER, I saw too many patients waiting, in silence, in despair. Children without matches. Elderly folks whispering, "I don't want to die yet." I wanted to do something, even if it was small. What I didn't know was that the man I was about to save was the very one my mother once asked me to forgive. Even before I ever had the chance to truly hate him. My name is Anthony. I'm 28. I used to think I was just a kid, someone left behind. But now, I'm starting to understand. Some people don't walk away because they don't care. They walk away because they believe they don't deserve to stay. The day the hospital called me, the sun had just started rising over the rooftops in West Loop. I had just finished a night shift, exhausted, running on no sleep. The coordinator's voice came through the phone, steady and rehearsed, like reading from a script. "You're one of the rare matches. The recipient's condition is critical. We need your consent as soon as possible." I agreed, without hesitation. For me, saving lives is a reflex. But something felt off. It started when I was filling out the donation paperwork, skimming the recipient's info. Richard A. Turner, age 56. Address, Evanston, just north of Chicago. That name, it wasn't unfamiliar. Faint, buried, but there. Not a stranger. It was the name printed on my birth certificate, under father. Turner, Richard Allen. I didn't go home. I went straight to my mother's old apartment. I opened the bottom drawer of her dresser, the one where she kept the envelope marked, "Things you don't need to carry." Inside was my birth certificate, and a black and white photo. My mother, younger, standing beside a tall, serious-looking man. His eyes were my eyes. That same deep, tired stare I saw in the mirror every morning. In faded blue ink on the back of the photo. For Anthony, if one day you ask about your father, I didn't need to read the rest. It wasn't a coincidence. The man waiting for a transplant was him. I stood there, frozen. I remembered one night, years ago, when Mom said, "You know, the night I went into labor, it was pouring rain." I called him 5 times. In the end, I took a cab to the hospital by myself. I gave birth alone. I still hoped he'd come. But he didn't. I had buried that memory deep. But now, I was the one giving him another shot at life. I wanted to back out, and I had the right to. All I had to do was sign a withdrawal form. No one would blame me, but I didn't sign it. I wandered for hours that afternoon. Eventually, I found myself sitting inside an old red brick church near Lakeview. Not because I was religious, but because it was quiet, like those evenings when Mom would read silently beside a cooling cup of tea. I pulled out the note she left before she passed. "If one day you see your father again, forgive him. Not for him, but for yourself." I read it 3 times. Each time, the weight sank deeper. Mom, who spent her life swallowing pain in silence. She wanted me to forgive the man who made her suffer for 28 years. I didn't understand, but I trusted her. I returned to the hospital, said nothing, signed everything. 2 weeks later, I was wheeled into the OR. They harvested marrow from my lower back. When I woke up, my head was pounding. My body ached. But the transplant was successful. The doctor came in, speaking softly. "He's awake. He wants to see you." Said if he could just look at the man who saved him, it'd be enough. I hesitated, then nodded. The room on the 9th floor was so quiet, I could hear the IV drip, 1 drop at a time. The man in the bed was frail. White hair, hollow eyes. Even aged, I recognized the lines in his face, the same ones from the photo in Mom's drawer. He looked at me, and in that second, something shifted in his eyes, as if time had been rewound, 30 years in a blink. Then he spoke, his voice trembling, each word scraped from the bottom of his lungs. "You're Anthony, right?" I froze. I didn't know how long I stood there. Didn't know if I felt anger or sorrow. Just numb. No tears. No words. I gave a faint nod. He raised his hand as if to hold mine, but he didn't have the strength. It landed weakly on the bed rail. His eyes dropped. "I'm sorry." I turned away. I used to think, if I ever met him, I'd scream. I'd ask how he could abandon my mom like that. But in that moment, I didn't feel rage. Just emptiness. I sat down, not too close. The room felt cold, and not just from the air conditioner. I finally spoke, my voice low and raw. "How do you know my name?" He looked up, eyes darting away. "I saw you once. At the hospital. When your mom was going through chemo? Just from a distance." I frowned. "How did you know I was your son?" "I don't use social media. No one knows I live here." He stayed silent. I studied him. Something felt off. A familiarity I couldn't explain. As if he knew more about me than I ever imagined. But he said nothing. Just shut his eyes. His lips sealed, like they were holding back one final truth he couldn't let go. I stood up. No accusations. No forgiveness. I said softly, "My mom once told me you were a good man. I don't know if she was right, but I did my part. Goodbye." I turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't look back, and I thought to myself, maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's just about no longer needing an explanation. I used to think I had closed the door on the past. I met him. No blame, no forgiveness. A moment so quiet, it felt like an ending. But the things we bury deep, they have their own way of resurfacing. Softly at first, then like a quiet explosion inside your chest. A week after he was discharged, I found an envelope at my doorstep. No sender. Blue ink, slanted handwriting. For Anthony. If you want to know the truth. Inside was an address in Evanston. And one final line. I know you don't want an apology, but you deserve to know what your mother once kept from you. Come. Someone will be waiting. I held that paper for a long time. I thought it was over, but it wasn't. Some pieces hadn't clicked into place yet. The care home sat quietly among light brick buildings and shady elm trees. The air smelled faintly of butter cookies. Room 214. Inside was an elderly woman in a wheelchair, her white hair neatly tied, eyes calm and clear. "Anthony." I nodded. She smiled gently. "I'm Evelyn, your mother's sister." I froze. All my life, my mother never once mentioned her family. In my memory, it was just her and me, cut off from everything else. "Your mother and I were once very close. Until she decided to keep you." We sat by the window. A soft breeze stirred the curtains. "When she got pregnant?" Richard panicked. "He already had a family in Indiana. No one knew. When your mom found out, she chose to keep you, against everyone's wishes. Mine included." I looked down. Each word felt like another stone pressed onto my chest. "She left on her own. Didn't beg. Didn't blame. That's the kind of woman your mother was." I asked quietly, "Did you know what she told me about the chemo bills?" Evelyn looked at me. "What did she say?" "That a charity covered special cases like hers." She exhaled, barely audible. "There was no charity. It was Richard. He sent money through a third party. No name, no conditions. He just wanted to do something, even if it was too late." I stiffened. My heartbeat pulsed in my ears. "Your mother knew, but she never told you. She didn't want you torn between love and resentment." I looked out the window. Lavender swayed gently in the garden. But inside me, nothing felt peaceful. "Why didn't he ever come?" "Not once." "Because he thought you hated him." But he watched from afar. In 7th grade, at your school fair, he stood outside the fence. I was there too. But your mother stopped him. She said, "If you have the courage, walk through that gate. If not, don't let him see you again." Thus, that night, I sat in Mom's old kitchen, opened the notebook she once used for lesson plans. One torn page left behind, a few words in her handwriting. "My son, if one day you learn the truth, please don't be angry with me. I didn't lie to deceive you. I just didn't want you burdened with unnecessary pain." I laid my hand on the book. And I knew. She wasn't hiding the truth. She was protecting me, in the only way a single mother knew how. The next morning, I returned to the hospital. Richard lay by the window, sunlight spilling across the white sheets. His eyes opened when he saw me. I sat down. For the first time, I reached out. Not out of duty, but because I wanted to look a dying man in the eye and ask what I needed to know. "I met Aunt Evelyn." He nodded, voice hoarse. "I'm not surprised. I figured you would. I know you paid for Mom's treatment. I know you came to my school, but not once. Did you knock on our door? His gaze drifted. Because I wasn't worthy. Your mother, she had the strength to forgive me without needing me. Me? I only knew how to regret from the sidelines. I said nothing, just looked at him. No more hate. But I couldn't name the feeling rising in my chest. Before I left, I pulled an old notebook from my pocket, and on a blank page I wrote, Mom, I've learned another piece of the truth. I haven't forgiven yet, but I'm no longer angry. That night, I stood on the balcony. The early autumn wind was cool on my face. The city lights still glowed, but something in me had gone quiet. The tension hadn't disappeared, but I knew now, some questions don't need answers. You just need the courage to keep going, even if not every wound gets to heal. I thought I had reached the end of the truth, but truth, I've learned, is like a house with a basement. The deeper you go, the colder and darker it gets. But that's also where the most important things are hidden. One late afternoon, I got a call from a law office. It was Richard's former attorney. He left behind a notebook, said it should be handed to you when there's no one else left to deliver it. I hesitated, then agreed. We met at a small cafe overlooking the lake. He slid across the table a worn leather-bound notebook. Hand-stitched spine, frayed edges, like it had been opened and closed more times than it should have. He called it a debt book, not a will. Just things he never said out loud. I took it home. Didn't open it right away. That night, I placed it on my desk, next to Mom's old watch. It was drizzling outside. I sat in the dark, as if waiting for myself to be ready, to open a room I had no idea what was inside. Then, I opened it. First page. Slanted handwriting, slightly shaky. Anthony, if you're reading this, it means I never got the chance to tell you these things in person. But there's something you need to know. Because if you don't, you'll keep misunderstanding the past. And yourself. Richard wrote that back in 1993. Before he ever met my mom, he had a son named Caleb. But the boy's mother left without a trace. He searched for nearly a decade. In vain. I lost a son, and with him, the chance to make things right. Then I met your mom, a quiet, sharp, determined woman, with a 3-year-old boy named Anthony. I froze. I was born in 1993, and I vaguely remembered Mom once told me my birth certificate had to be redone because of a mistake in the name. Back then, I didn't think twice. But now, something shifted in me. Next page. The ink got darker, as if written on a deep breath. Anthony, you are Caleb. I just sat there, staring at those 3 words. I realized it after the bone marrow screening. The DNA results were a perfect match. I confirmed it through the National Gene Bank. There's no doubt. You're the child I thought I lost. The son I loved from afar, without knowing you were the same boy. I couldn't breathe. My whole life, I'd blamed him for walking away. But what if it was my mother who left first? What if she changed my name, moved us somewhere new, so he could never find us again? At the back of the notebook was a small envelope. Inside, a DNA report. Name, Anthony Ray Carter. Compared with Richard Miles. Result, father-son. Match probability, 99%. The next morning, I went straight to the hospital. Met with the lead doctor. How long has he known I was Caleb? The doctor nodded, not surprised. Since the DNA results came in, but he didn't say a word. He just told me, if I tell him he'll walk away, I'd rather let him think I'm a stranger than tell the truth and lose him forever. I went home, opened Mom's notebook. Last page, one line in her handwriting. If one day you learn that I chose silence, please understand, it was the only way I knew to protect you from truths you weren't ready to forgive. I placed both notebooks together, his and hers, and sat there, quietly, as if, for the first time in my life, I had no one left to blame. No more anger, just a sadness. Not sharp, not loud, just soft, like a scar long healed, but still slowing the heart a beat every time it's touched. I finished reading both notebooks, and for days after, I did nothing. No calls, no emails. I just walked around the city, as if every step might help me figure out how far I'd come. From the name Anthony I used to carry. One dusk evening, the hospital called. The nurse spoke softly. Mr. Richard doesn't have much time left, but he's still waiting for you. I went, not in a rush, not sure I was ready. But I knew, some things, if you don't do them now, you may never get the chance again. He was lying on his side. Late afternoon light fell through the sheer curtain. His eyes weren't bright, but they were still warm. "You read the notebook, didn't you?" I nodded, sat down beside him. "I don't expect forgiveness, but if you can, remember me as someone who tried to come back." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the man who abandoned me. I saw someone slowly fading out of this life. Hands trembling, voice cracked to the bone. "I used to hate you so much." I gently held his hand. "But now I understand. We all have moments we get it wrong, and we all deserve one last chance to get it right." I held his hand, not out of duty, not out of guilt, but because I wanted to let go of the anger myself. Richard passed away early the next morning. No funeral, no family, just me, the lawyer, and the man who handled the arrangements. I didn't give a eulogy. I simply placed a small photo on his coffin, a picture my mother once kept, of him holding me when I was too young to know who he was. Back at the apartment, I opened an old drawer. Inside a wooden box was a yellow envelope. On the front, in my mother's handwriting, "For Anthony, when you no longer need answers." Inside was a photo, Mom, Richard, and me as a newborn. On the back, she'd written, "You weren't born out of perfect love, but you were the best thing I ever chose to keep." I sat there a long time, holding that photo. No pain, just a quiet stillness, like the final wound in that little room had just closed. That night, I signed up as a bone marrow donor, not out of guilt, not to repay anything, just because I'd once been given a second chance at life by someone who still called me son, even if he never heard me say it back. A few days later, I joined a support group for adults who had lost family. I didn't plan to speak, but then I raised my hand, took the mic. I used to hate my father so much I couldn't even say his name. I thought I was born by mistake, but I wasn't. I was born from people who failed and tried to make it right, even if it was late. No one clapped, but someone looked at me like they'd just found something in their own cracks too. That night, back home, I opened a new notebook, blank. On the first page, I wrote, "My name is Anthony. I used to be Caleb, but now I'm just someone learning how to live again, with a heart that no longer needs to win or lose against the past." That night, it rained again, just like the night months ago, when I first felt something shifting inside me, something I couldn't name yet. I stood by the window, watching the wet streets below. Old memories didn't flood me anymore. They passed quietly, like the traffic outside. Everyone has a reason to keep going. I had walked a road no one asked me to take. No one told me to forgive. No one expected me to understand on anyone's behalf. I walked it because I didn't want to stay trapped in the past one day longer. My mother, the woman who always chose silence over explanations. Now I understand. Sometimes silence is a form of love, because speaking might hurt someone more. Richard, a father who came too late. But maybe love, even if late, is still love, if it gave someone one more day to live. And me, whether I'm Anthony or Caleb, it doesn't really matter anymore. I used to be a man who needed to win every pain. Now, I just want to live a life that doesn't have to be right or wrong about what already happened. I'm not trying to forget. I just choose not to carry it anymore. Because I've learned, forgiveness isn't erasing something. It's laying it down in the right place. The two notebooks, my mother's and Richard's, I still keep them. I don't read them again, but I've never put them away. They're proof that I was loved, even if not in the way I had hoped. A friend once asked me, if you had known everything beforehand, would you have lived your life differently? I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, no, because not knowing gave me the chance to choose how I would respond. And sometimes, how we respond to the truth is how we truly grow up. I used to think I needed to know everything. Now I see some truths, if heard at the right moment, feel lighter than even the whole truth told too soon. Before bed, I flipped back to the first page of my new notebook. The words were still there. No longer a question, but a quiet affirmation. My name is Anthony. Not to forget Caleb, but to carry them both forward. Like two hands, one that once held pain tightly, and one that's learning to open up to the world.